Because although I've used my own experience of losing my parents when I first went to boarding school as the instrument through which I understood the torture my patient suffered when her parents died, yet this is not the whole story, because another aspect of my understanding was that the death of her parents was unrecognized by others. And I understood that she'd suffered, therefore, the death of her parents alone, and that it was being on her own in the disaster that she had suffered, which was so shattering. And it was this that I understood when she told me the second time. Now, I had an experience in my early adulthood where, like Hamlet, I had knowledge of something which I was unable to share. So there was a conjunction of two experiences that were the instrument that were needed to produce the act of understanding. The second aspect was the suffering of something unshared. But I wouldn't want to claim that it was these experiences in themselves which were the instruments through which the act of understanding took place, but rather that they were screen memories for something that was more basic and painful. It was Freud who coined the term screen memory, and by it he meant that a memory in adult or childhood is poignant because it hides a more fundamental memory or experience. Therefore, I think the conjunction of these two experiences of mine, losing my parents when I was aged 11 and suffering an experience in loneliness in early adulthood, were screen memories for something more primitive and more universal. I think that Freud's screen memory does not so much conceal a memory, but rather a universal experience, a painful one that all human beings will have passed through. One is death of the one I love and revere, and the other is knowledge in loneliness, and that these are universals in that everyone has experienced them, and they have subsequently become screened behind more adult memories. And I'll come a bit later to the sort of like one of the soul heart of a psychotic disturbance is the isolation and loneliness and the unsharedness of what's happened. So now I return to this question, why is there this barrier against these universal experiences? It's because awareness of them, I think, puts a demand upon me. It demands that I open myself to a more basic humanness shared by all, that I open myself to this sort of being or isness. It also means renouncing a surface belonging in favor of a deeper reality, because to belong is a basic human need. I belong to my family, but ultimately there is a deeper belonging, and it is this which has a prior claim upon me. Death spells the end of this individual life, but the world still exists. It is this existence which has a prior claim. And why is this so difficult? Why do I always put so great a weight behind my own individual existence? What I'm saying here is not that relations with my family and friends will ever be less important than relations with strangers, but that the deeper claim that I'm talking of only occurs when there's first been a death of an attachment which is sort of surface to surface. It is when this has died that the deeper claim asserts its primacy. There is a fear that if I let go of this surface attachment to my own individual existence, I'll plunge into nothingness. Out of this fear, I cling to my own individual existence and surface attachments and particular sort of predilections. So when, like I said last time, when psychiatrists, psychologists, psychotherapists, psychoanalysts talk of someone thinking concretely, they're referring to this elemental fear of nothingness, of being totally unrelated, which makes the person cling with great sort of intensity to something solid. And that's what lies behind what's referred to as concrete thinking. It's a it's a phobic flight from something that's much, much more terrifying. To understand concreteness, we have to see that it constitutes a flight from an abyss of emptiness. I gave the image last time, but it's always the image that strikes me of like sort of being in some spacecraft. You suddenly wake up and it's just floating out in outer space, and there's planet Earth is out of sight, and there's nothing in sight at all. And you've got no control column to guide it anywhere, and you're just out there, unrelated to anywhere. These universals are there in the personality, but we are required to appropriate them personally so they become truly ours. The memories that screen them give us entry into the universal, so the screen is also a personal sort of revealer. It gives us a personal entry, entrare, into the universal. The entry which is unique to me makes the universal a personal possession and brings me into brotherhood with all my fellow human beings. It also transforms the surface-to-surface attachment to family members in such a way that the relation is inner to inner, which allows freedom between myself, my parents, my wife, or children. And you see, one of the things I said, sometimes the thing that is undeveloped, quite often what is undeveloped when there's a powerful superego is that capacity to have an inner image of the person. And so, for instance, quite often we talk about the way a patient is affected by separation, but that type of trauma of that separation only really occurs if there isn't like a capacity to form an inner image of the therapist or analyst or any other person. So it's a sort of another example often of something that is undeveloped. So these screen memories are important signals and they require my attention. They are there in memory in order to open me to the universals of human experience. They are the registrations within my own individual person. They are therefore not abstract, but enfleshed into the current of my life. Therefore, although they are universals, the particular experience of them will be different for Philippa, for Joseph, or for someone who lived long ago in a different age and culture. Therefore, they are universal and yet uniquely personal. The universal is only meaningful when it is filtered through the lens of my own experience. Now, what I want to emphasize is that in order to understand madness in someone, we have to search for a personal instrument inside of ourselves. This is the only thing, as it were, undercuts the force of the superego in psychotic patients. It's the superego, as it were, is like the group culture that's suppressing the individual inside, and the only thing that gets through is something that's truly personal to me that gets through to the other.